Hi, this is Pete Gary, and welcome to Fact or Fiction Friday Special Edition. Today, we're fortunate enough to have with us Armand Grossman. And Armand, thank you so much for joining us this morning with Boca Voice.
Pete, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you, and delightful to be able to be with you and to talk about a subject near and dear to my heart, and the city of Boca Raton.
Well, great. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what brought you and how long you've been in Boca? I don't want to date you, but tell us how long you've lived in Boca.
I appreciate you not trying to date me, but it's inevitable somewhere along the line. And I came to Boca actually 51 years ago in 1965. And I came here to go to Florida Atlantic University. I like to tell people that it was based on the outstanding academics that attracted me. But although this Florida Atlantic University and their initial hires had truly outstanding academics, and they really did. It's a heritage that they should be very, very proud of. It was a unique university, and I'm very, very proud to have been part of the foundation of that university. But the truth of the matter is, I used to come down here on spring break from my undergraduate experience and go to Fort Lauderdale for spring break, where the boys are, and I love Florida. I just think Florida is the greatest place in the world. I wouldn't live anywhere else. I love that beautiful turquoise blue water and the beaches and the palm trees and the weather. And every day when I go to the beach, I feel the same as I did then. I think this is a fantastic place. The unique thing is, Pete, that I'm not alone in those feelings. Many people come to Florida, and they come to Florida. We have 1,000 people a day still moving to Florida. And while Florida is beautiful and offers many aspects of the state of Florida, Palm Beach County is actually very unique, and I think within Palm Beach County, Palm Beach and Boca are exceptional.
I think Boca Raton is a jewel in itself.
No question about it. And so I've seen the city of Boca Raton grow significantly. At the time when I was here, 95 didn't go all the way through, and Military Trail was about as west as you could go. The Polo Grounds, where Houston is now, over near Town Center, and going to polo matches and seeing cars in the Boca Raton Resort. Boca Raton was so very special. And today I'm fortunate enough to live right there across from the resort, which I still think in its architecture and its scope and purpose, it's a fantastic place. And so the city of Boca Raton is very, very special and very near and dear to my heart.
Well, I appreciate that. Listen, you're very politically connected in this town as well as in general in Florida. So tell me a little bit about the political landscape and what you think in regards to the city and the direction in which we're heading.
Well, it's very important that we preserve our legacy. I know there's a lot of people that are upset about downtown Boca. Some people are, some people aren't, but it's downtown Boca. And it's very interesting you ask me that, Pete, because when I came here, the power structure, I was a political science major in undergraduate school. What a shock, right?
I know.
And we had these incredible professors at FAU, truly outstanding political science department. And I had the good fortune of Bob Huckshorn and John DeGrove, and my urban planning course under John DeGrove, who was a national figure. We did a community power structure assessment. Tom Fleming, who started Florida Atlantic University, was one of the people whose names keep going. And the way we assessed the community power structure at that time, we simply walked around and said, "Who's in charge here?" And that had validity. We found out who was in charge.
Sure.
And it isn't now. There's a de facto power and there's de jure power, and who was really in charge. And those are the people who were very influential in the city of Boca Raton. And Fleming was extremely influential in bringing Florida Atlantic University to Boca Raton, which is another huge enhancement to the city of Boca Raton.
Oh, absolutely. FAU has just been a driving force in the city. It's been a pleasure, especially with the new stadium coming in.
Right.
It's just been absolutely phenomenal.
Exactly. And unfortunately, that town and gown relationship has not really been fostered in a way that it could be. When we look at college towns such as Ann Arbor, I mean or Gainesville, they are college towns. East Lansing, Michigan, there are a number of them.
Agreed.
And we have not actually married the universities, and Lynn as well, an outstanding university, with the city in a way that promoting Boca Raton as a college town that is certainly a significant enhancement. Florida Atlantic University has been a significant enhancement to Southeast Florida.
Do you think some of that development that's going to be happening over off of 95 and Spanish River I'm forgetting which development they're putting in there. Do you
Yeah.
think some of that is gonna help Florida Atlantic creating some of the?
Oh, no question. That'll be a great enhancement to the Florida Atlantic University, and that is a modern concept in urban planning today, where people live, work, and play, and they don't need a car anymore, to the extent that we do. Our highways are way overcrowded, and we found ways of doing this, and I think it's an outstanding concept where people will live right there. They can go to the university. Everything is within walking distance or public transportation. And that certainly is the wave of the future.
Sure. Now, you can't go anywhere in town these days, Armand, and not see the signs up and not look at anything online right now, and including Book of Voice, and not see about the last question on our ballot in regards to the old Wildflower Property. What's your take? You lived here for 51 years. I've lived here for almost 30. What's your take on the water on that property?
Well, clearly I remember that property very well because when I moved here, that was called the Bayou. And it was a great restaurant in Boca Raton, certainly much out of my financial reach at the time. But it was where people went and to enjoy a good meal. People pulled up and they had valet car service, which was something unique that I had not experienced where I grew up in Cleveland. I never saw something like that. And the Cadillac was the car of choice at that time. And it was a fabulous, fabulous restaurant. And so that location has always been a restaurant. Then it later became Max's was on the corner, the Wildflower. I did not know the Wildflower all that well, but it was certainly a great location, and it's still known as the Wildflower Property. And so it has always been a restaurant, and so there's great precedence for retaining it as a restaurant property.
So what's your understanding of what's happened now since the city purchased it in 2009? What's been your understanding of what's going on back and forth in regards to that property?
Well, that property was purchased in 2009 at a cost of $7.5 million for 2.2 acres. And Susan Welcher was the mayor at that time, and she clearly recalls that it was purchased for the intention of the city to lease that out to a private entity as a restaurant. And that was the intent, and rightfully so. Now there is a petition before the people that is, frankly, I believe it's deceptive in its content, the way it reads. This ordinance 5356, where only public uses can be used for waterfront properties, something along with anything adjacent to the intercoastal waterway. And there are those people who want to make that 2.2 acres into a city park.
I know.
The city has one of the great advantages of the City of Boca Raton. We have two outstanding credits to the city. One is our public library system. Our libraries are second to none. I think our libraries are just fantastic.
They're incredible.
They really are just wonderful. The second thing, of course, is our great, exceptional park system. We have over 1,600 acres of parks in the city of Boca Raton, well-maintained, beautiful parks, wonderful waterfront property. Gumbo Limbo, Red Reef are outstanding. Now, according to, we need 2.2 acres additional park space?
That's insane.
Absolutely not. We don't. It's not required. We don't need that. I was going up the intercoastal with some friends on their boat Memorial Day weekend. We looked over at Red Reef. Sadly, it was underutilized. I thought on Memorial Day this would be jammed. It wasn't. Is there a big public demand for it? No, I don't. I don't see that at all. These parks are outstanding.
Well, they are way under, which is a good point, which is not being brought up, Armand. The park system currently is way underutilized in general. With 16 acres per 1,000 residents on a promise of only 11,000 acres, or 11 acres per 1,000 residents, it's well underutilized. And I think we have not done a good job of explaining that to the residents, unfortunately, where they realize that we truly do have an amazing park system. If we would utilize the park system we currently have, they'd understand that we don't need a small postage-sized lot. You know,
Right.
and what really infuriates me is that it seems to be, again, that the loud minority is just flexing their will to try to get a park in that location.
Right. The fellow who circulated the petition, James Henry's a nice fellow. He and his wife, I met them both, and they're wonderful Boca people. Yeah, but you know, it's in their interest to make that into a. They live
Across
Right.
the intercoastal waterway.
Exactly. So I can understand their perspective of this. But actually, it would only be used by a small amount of people. Whereas, when it becomes a restaurant, it becomes open to the public, and thousands of people will use that. Initially, when we start talking about in our conversation here, Pete, the Florida lifestyle is a wonderful way to live.
Yes.
And one of the great things of the Florida lifestyle I particularly love, and I'm sure and many other people do as well, cruising down the intercoastal is just looking at the magnificent Florida landscape, the beautiful homes, and then being able to stop pull your boat up to a restaurant and have dinner at a restaurant is uniquely Florida.
Right.
It's a beautiful experience. While we can go up to Delray and do that, there are restaurants all along the intercoastal. On Hollywood, there's restaurants along the intercoastal. Come to Boca, there's only one.
Now, there are some naysayers that'll say that Hillstone made a decision down in Pompano to not allow boats to park at their docks. However, what the facts haven't shown, and what they have not done a good job of doing, is explaining that the city, in its infinite wisdom, which I thought the mayor and the city council did a great job, is they did a land lease. They did not give Hillstone the ability to control the docks or control the walkways around it. So they only gave them the ability to build a restaurant on the property. They control the seawall, they control the docks, so the city can build docks.
Right.
Not granting access to the docks there is not Hillstone's choice.
Right.
It's actually the city's choice. So the city therefore controls whether or not docks are allowed, boats are allowed to dock there. So people will be able to pull up and dock there and dine at Houston's or whatever Hillstone decides to name that restaurant.
Right.
They do not have the option to decide whether or not a person can actually pull up, boat, and dock at those docks. And also allow them to walk around, because one of the other big misconceptions that I've seen people talk about, and I'm interested in getting your opinion, is that they've said, well, it's no longer going to be available to all the residents, that it's going to stop ingress and egress to the intercoastal waterway. Well, if you look at the way that the lease is written, it doesn't seem to be that way at all. I mean, would you agree or disagree?
Oh, I absolutely agree with you, Pete. And yeah, it's you and I bring people in from out of town and take them to. It's wonderful. Boca's been very blessed with some fabulous restaurants.
Sure.
Some of the best restaurants in the world are in Boca Raton. I was in Europe recently, and they said, "Oh, we got some great food." I said, "Yeah, it was good, but I live in Boca, and we have great restaurants and great." But waterfront dining is unique and special to the Florida lifestyle.
Right.
And when people come in from out of town at the university, when we're recruiting kids or so, and their parents, and we take them to a waterfront restaurant, it's uniquely Florida, and something like that is uniquely Boca
And you have to
Raton.
take them out of Boca to do it. There's only one
Right.
option.
Right.
You have to take them to a hotel in order to do it. And I for one, don't want to have to take them to a hotel to dine on the water.
Exactly. And then let's look at the economic side of it. Right now, we've got a $7 million property, $7.5 million property. I'm not sure what the assessment is on it right now. But City of Boca Raton residents are paying taxes on that property.
Correct.
We lease that out, it becomes monetized, and there is revenue generating. So aside, just looking from the financials, now is taking a liability and making it into an asset on the income.
Let's
statement.
talk about that for a second, because there's some debate, and Al from Boca Watch has done Al Zakar from Boca Watch has done a great job of creating rhetoric and telling people, well, sleight of hand, look, they're not going to pay tax on that property through this lease. But what he hasn't explained is that they negotiated a long-term lease. And then it's not uncommon in a long-term lease to create concessions in a long-term lease for commitment. And if somebody's willing to write a long-term lease and commit, landlords do give concessions to create loyalty to make
Right.
sure that they have that income coming in for a
Well
long
said.
time. Right?
Right.
So what do you say to somebody that's saying, well, they gave a concession to this and it gives an unfair advantage to other restaurateurs in the area that have to do that don't have that same concession?
Well, you mentioned Al Zaccaro. Al's a good friend of mine, as you know, and but the old adage is when two people agree on everything, one of them's not thinking. So on this one, Al and I probably take an exception from each other. I believe it's just a wonderful thing. First of all, the financial side, and then from the actual service side, and then it's going to create 100 jobs or plus. And a lot of those kids are FAU students or Lynn students. and to offer the opportunity to our students to work part-time, particularly in the food service industry. It's a big problem today. While the state universities are very financially astute in terms of their tuition, our tuition is very low in the state of Florida. Still, many kids have difficulty making ends meet. That's very understandable. That is a common college experience. If they can work part-time and gain experience, and if they are tied into our hospitality programs or public marketing programs, any type of business program, any type of service, and they learn, they become accustomed to waiting tables, being a service person. That's a wonderful experience. Not only are they making money, but it's a great experience. So it's providing 100 plus more jobs right here in the city of Boca Raton, which is very good.
Geez, Armand, those are great points. And I didn't even, in none of the arguments that we talked about today, we talked about actually adding jobs to the community, specifically for students going to FAU. That is a great point. I got to be honest with you. I wish I had thought about it, but if you don't mind, I'm going to steal it in some of my commentary that I'm going to use.
I didn't copyright it, so it's fine. Actually, my youngest son is worked over at Bellagio in Meisner Park as a busboy. That was his first job at age 16. And I said, now, look what you're learning on this job. You are learning customer service. Customer service is a foundational point of any business, no matter what business you are in. And you're learning how to deal with people who are not necessarily, everybody's not the nicest person. Now, when you deal with that person, which you will the rest of your life, no matter what position you're in, it is of great value to learn that skill. And when you, and he was frankly very, very good at what he did. I'm very proud of him. But for any kid to be in that position, and I'm a firm believer in cooperative education, where kids go to work part-time and go to school part-time. The enhancement to the individual kid is huge. First of all, financially, it's very good for him. But second of all, the curriculum in the school becomes much more relevant due to the fact that you have hands-on experience working in a business that you can relate to, so that the curriculum becomes far more meaningful as a result of it, rather than simply being an abstract concept of being an academic experience.
I couldn't agree more, Armand. I couldn't agree more. Listen, thank you so much for joining. Anything else you'd like to tell our viewers today?
No, I just would encourage them to vote no on that particular ordinance, because it's somewhat deceptive in its wording, which is not uncommon on a ballot, and it's not to the best interest of the city of Boca Raton that we would ever pass that. So I would encourage everyone to vote no, and then enjoy a nice facility when it comes to fruition.
Thank you again for joining us on the Boca Voice. We look forward to seeing you next week, and please make sure, if you haven't already voted, get out and vote on November the 8th. It's a very, very, very important day to vote, not only for our nation, but locally. It's important to get out and vote. Get out the vote. Thank you, and enjoy your weekend.